The program manager for training systems is Marine Corps Systems Command's executive agent assigned to manage acquisition and lifecycle support of Marine Corps ground training systems, devices, and training support services. Behind the scenes, engineers, logisticians, project managers, and more are tasked with bringing emerging training systems to Marines to not just prepare for the fight, but to increase their survivability on the battlefield. On today's show, I'm speaking with Robert Rivera, who goes by Bobby, facilities engineer from PM Training Systems. Welcome to the show, Bobby.
Thank you. It's a real honor to be on your podcast.
So before we get started, I got to ask, because I'm in Virginia today and you're in Orlando, so what's the weather like down there?
Oh, it's humid, it's hot, and we're expecting temperatures over 100 degrees today.
I'm convinced that everybody in Florida is paid extra to tell the rest of us that the weather's too bad for us to come and visit. So you've done your job. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Who is Bobby Rivera?
I'm a civil engineer. I graduated from college in 1986. I specialize in structural engineering.
Okay.
I worked for over 28 years as a construction manager, engineer, project engineer, all in construction. And then I moved to Orlando like 9 years ago and started working with the Navy and then follow up with PM Traces.
So where were you originally from?
I'm from Puerto Rico.
Okay.
From a town on the east side, which is close to the old Roswell Roads Naval Station. So I grew up with many of these Navy kids in my neighborhood. So I'm very familiarized with this military society, if you can say that.
So you said you came to work for the Navy, and then you came over to Traces. What were you doing with the Navy before you came to Traces?
Yeah, I started working at NSA Orlando as a facilities engineer, and
Okay.
I supported all these flight simulators for the Marine Corps, actually, even though I was working on the Navy side. Then I had a friend here in PM Traces that told me about all these ground training systems they had. I just found them more interesting for my skills and my structural engineering background. So that's how I ended up in Traces.
So now, before we get down to the nitty gritty of just what you're working on day to day, can you give us, the elevator speech for just overall what PM Traces does?
Okay, PM Traces actually is the acquisition agent for the Marine Corps System Command. We usually get our requirements from the Training and Education Command, and also we get their funding and we make it happen. We fill the trainers, we support the trainers, and we maintain them through their whole life cycle period.
So when I think of what Traces does, when I think of the trainers, we're talking shoe houses that Marines go through. We're talking about vehicle type trainers, rollover trainers, a lot of, I guess nowadays, some virtual reality type stuff, things that go boom in the middle of a range. So what am I missing?
PM Traces and under STS, which is the division I work for, I do some of the ranges side on the UX, which is the underwater UX trainer as well. It's basically simulation training scenarios through computerized systems that digitally replicates specific conditions for the purpose of user training. It's all about computer, software, projection screens, projectors, just to create that environment that will give the Marines mostly real scenarios of the battle condition.
Okay, so you said STS, so that's product manager for synthetic training systems. Well, what is synthetic training systems?
Well, it's the divisions that specializes in the acquisition of trainers that involve simulation through computers, projection screens. You will have trainers with long projection screens. Other will have a 360 degrees projection screen, and they're all indoors, basically. And that's where the facilities engineering expertise is being challenged the most, because being on an indoor environment, you have to control the climate, you have to control also the electrical features of the space, and the dimension of the space as well. And with that comes structures. And that's where we facilities engineers are more challenged in our scope.
And so the whole goal here is to try to give the Marines in a training environment as realistic of a feel, of a look and a feel. I don't know. There's five senses. Do you do smells in the training systems as well?
We have what we call the indoor training system, which is the immersed training system, and we have not only smell, we can also have noises as part of the scenarios that we train on mouths, or all these conditions will come into play to have a very real experience of the training system.
MOUT, that's a military operation in urbanized terrain.
Right.
All right. Well, that's cool. So facilities engineering, I know that, I've got an idea in my head just what that is, but can you describe overall what facilities engineering is a little bit more than, like I said, in my mind, well, I engineer facilities. So tell us that.
Over the 9 years I've been working as a facilities engineer, I can really summarize our work in a few words, and expect practically ensure that the assigned facility for a training system will support the training system in terms of the requirements. And this can be electrical requirements, HVAC requirements, compressed air requirements, as well as the space requirements. So we, in a sense, we're one of the longest pole in this tent. We have to come early. Sometimes we don't have a defined set of requirements. We have to challenge ourselves to get as much information as we can, because when we have to start a facility project, sometimes the training system is not on the maturity level that we want it to. So we have to, sometimes get more on the facility put in, so it will eventually support the training system at the end of the project. And specifically, we have to be sure that the building meets all the requirements to support this training system. That's what basically facilities engineering is.
Yeah, so for me in my day job, I think in terms of the safety requirements, and so I imagine you're handling those.
Well, safety is the first we assess in terms when we position a training system in the space that we have the clear space for emergency evacuation. We have all the fire protection systems and the adequate doors with adequate hardware for safety operation of the training system.
So I imagine then, since it's all facilities, when I think actually building facilities within the Department of the Navy, do you work a lot with NAVFAC?
Yes, we're engaged with NAVFAC every day. And one of the interesting things about NAVFAC is not all NAVFACs are created equal.
Okay.
So you have to deal with a NAVFAC that does things different from another NAVFAC. So you think you will deal with NAVFAC, but you're dealing with a lot of entities that are called NAVFAC that will, they work differently. And NAVFAC is the Naval Facilities Support that will give us some kind of support on the construction side of the facilities.
Well, I definitely, when you talk about not all NAVFACs are created equal, yeah, so my experience is more working with NAVC. And so, of course, if you're talking with, the different NAVC branches, then they are very different. So I can see where you're coming from with the NAVFACs being different. So I understand, little birdie tells me that you recently received some accolades for some work that you did with 3MEF on the underwater egress trainer. First of all, congratulations. Yes. But can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Actually, when this came, I was in the facility engineer for UA, which is the underwater egress trainer. And I just heard about the condition, and since my background was structural engineer, it was tailored for my skills, so I jumped in. And the situation is that we have the gantry cranes for the underwater egress trainer. And these are from the East Coast to the West Coast, including Japan, Hawaii. We have this training system all over the place. There was a new design for the helicopter fuselage cap that we trained Marines on in how to egress from a possible scenario that they will be in the water and they have to bail out from the fuselage. So this heavier cap, new cap, called for having all the structure being assessed structurally. And one of the sites, which is Okinawa, there was a concern with the corrosion level on some of the members of the gantry crane, to a point that the recommendation from the structural engineer back then, I think it was last December, he stated that this may compromise the safe operation of the training system. So it was decided to stop training right away. And when I found out about this, and they were talking about, long-term repairs solution, which is the replacement of the whole crane, and that will take at least 9 months and will impact 10,000 Marines not having this training and not being able to be deployed. I jumped in as soon as I heard the situation. I looked at the situation. I told them I can fix it with a few structural modifications. I did a site survey, came back. I did a design with a steel assembly that will transfer all the loads away from the corrosion spot. And we made this happen in less than 90 days. Actually, we're training since February, nonstop, up to now in October, which the replacement of this crane is going to happen. So that was a huge impact and a good course of action that we took, and having over 9,000 Marines being trained over this period of time.
I know how much the egress trainers, how important they are to the fleet in order for us to have Marines, properly trained to be able to, in this case, you were talking about the helicopter egress. And so keeping that up and running is phenomenal. So
things like this is what we need more, just to think a little bit out of the box and, give the Marines the training they need, in a constant basis.
So if I go back in my own career, I can look at an instance where we had a helicopter crash a number of years ago in the water, and every single Marine on that helicopter got off. And afterwards, they were all being interviewed, because here we had, I would call it a fairly successful mishap in that we got all the Marines off safely. And they were all asked, what do you attribute your survival? And a bunch of them were like, well, I experienced this. And then I remembered in my training, we were told, or I experienced this in the training. And so, from that point forward, I've just always been impressed with the quality of training that we're giving them for, these sorts of helicopter mishaps, but that these Marines survived that, and they attribute it to exactly that training. But that brings up a question. You were working directly, you went out to the fleet. A lot of our program officers don't go right out and turn a wrench and work directly with the equipment in the fleet. There's other maintainers that do that. Have you had many opportunities in your career at Traces to go and work directly with the fleet?
Well, not much, but there's a few chances that I had to work directly with the fleet, and there's some special reasons for it. Sometimes we have to go back to the fleet to get concurrence, to get their ideas, the way forward. So things like that will be more engaging side with the fleet. But basically, on a normal standard training system building, we'll let that to the program manager to be engaged with the fleet.
So I know that we as a command overall, we're constantly working on capabilities to ensure that Marines can be called to fight, in any climate or place. We mentioned a little bit of it earlier, but how do these elements factor into your job as a facilities engineer?
Well, we have to take in consideration where we are training and what the objective of the training is in terms of the environment as well, And one of the big factors that will drive our design towards the facility as well as the trainer is corrosion. Corrosive environment will drive up that design, but definitely we have to adapt the trainer to the specific climate or place that the Marines want to train on. There's a few challenges for us, the facility side. We have to address them, and usually we have the unified facilities criteria help us a lot define these elements that will go into design to be able to create or to provide training scenarios in any climate or any place.
Yeah, I can definitely imagine Quantico and Camp Pendleton are very different places to set up your equipment than Hawaii and Okinawa. Yeah, I can imagine that that's quite a challenge, and you're up to it. So great job. Can you tell us a little bit about where Traces begins and ends, and where TCOM begins and ends?
Yeah, in general, PM Traces is the material developer. TCOM actually is the capability requirement sponsor, and they also provide with the funding to us be able to execute the acquisition of any training system.
So right, and I think that answer is probably true with a lot of the equipment that we field. I know that you guys just do training systems overall. Some of the other program offices will field, training with their system when they initially field. So right, again, we do the equipment, but TCOM runs the schoolhouses and stuff like that. So let me ask you a question. If there are young folks out there who are considering or maybe not considering a career in acquisition or engineering, what kind of advice would you give them?
If I had a chance to go back to college, I would probably go into software engineering. Software engineering is what moving all these new weapon systems that we are building right now and the new ones that will be built for the next 20, 30 years. I don't see how we can get away from software. And the more software engineer we have, the more prepared we're going to be to defend our nation in the near future. It's very important that we have the capability of software engineers to a maximum extent.
So software engineering, that's the career advice coming from Bobby. I think a lot of us might make different decisions if we went back in time. So software engineering.
That's the future. That's the future for our defense system.
What's the future for Bobby Rivera?
My plan is to get better on what I do right now, feel very comfortable with my work, and the more prepared I am to execute it, the better. I'm not too far away from my retirement, but not thinking about it at all, and just focusing on my work and try to do it better every day.
Now, I don't know if you're aware, we've got a bunch of lightning round questions that we ask around here. You ready to field the lightning round questions?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, so Bobby, when you were a child, what did you want to be when you grew up?
Oh, I want to be an astronaut. And I was 7 years old when we got to the moon, and I saw that black and white picture. I thought, being an astronaut was the best you can be in the world. But, reality kicks in eventually. And I became an engineer. But really, it was an astronaut that I want to become.
I work with a lot of kids in youth groups and stuff. And one thing I tell them is I'm pretty convinced that the first human beings that will walk on Mars are already born today. They are, somewhere in school somewhere. I guarantee you that when mankind goes to Mars, we will take engineers along.
That's right.
If you could have dinner with any historical figure, who would it be?
Oh, that would be Albert Einstein. Oh, I would love to hear from him how he thinks about sports, restaurants, about the everyday life from a guy that is considered a genius. And not really engage with him on the scientific part because I would not understand that side. But really, how this guy, that genius like he was, looked simple like. And I heard a story from him that when he got to the U.S. and started university here as a professor, he has only one tie. Somebody gave him as a gift a second tie. So he was so concerned, he went back home and his wife told him, "Oh, what's going on with you?" "Well, I got two ties now. So I have a big problem to solve. Which one I wear and when?" So it seems like this genius guy has different point of view of our everyday life, and I will be interested on hearing them from him. And I don't think I will have that chance now, but that will be the one that I really want to be talking to.
Do you have any tips for maintaining a work-life balance?
I'm pretty much involved with my family, my two sons. They still living with us, even though one is 26 and the second is 20. But yeah, it's a very tight family environment that really gets me on the balance between my personal life and my work. Secret is your family.
So what is a TV show, book, movie, or podcast that you'd recommend?
I love Pirates of the Caribbean. That movie just captivated me from the first one. And I'm just hoping that they continue.
All right. So do you want Johnny Depp to come back? And
Yes. So change that guy.
So is Jack Sparrow your favorite character then?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So some years ago, we were doing the Disney thing, and we were on Disney's private island. And while we were riding on this train, one of their Jack Sparrow actors hopped in, and it's just amazing. You really felt like he was channeling his inner Johnny Depp playing the Jack Sparrow character. So it's like we met the guy. So cool deal.
Yeah.
Well, Bobby, look, I have enjoyed our conversation today, talking about Traces, talking about you, talking about the work that y'all do down there in facilities engineering, and I appreciate your coming on the podcast today.
Yeah, and thanks for the opportunity. I hope that our listeners will get a grasp on what facilities engineer is. And it's an honor for me to be on this podcast. Thank you very much.
All right. Well, thanks a lot, Bobby. Have a good one. Well, this concludes another episode of Equipping the Core. I hope you've enjoyed our conversation today. If so, please take a couple minutes to leave us a review, subscribe, and tell your friends about us. Until next time, stay safe. This is Tripp Elliott signing off.